Morning, everybody. Welcome to our Live Line Training Center here in South Carolina. It's kind of a misty day. We got a system that's slowly moving out, and 2 hours from here in that direction are beaches today, pure sun, about 72 degrees. So it's beach weather today in December in South Carolina. Just thought I'd mention that for you folks, but it's beautiful. And real quick, Mr. Dwight Miller with Ohio's Electric Cooperative Association, he's going to be speaking today on gauges. How do you measure safety? And I'm real excited about Dwight's presentation. I met Dwight just not quite a year ago in January in North Dakota. So I guess you could say that our friendship, he's a great bud of mine. Our friendship started off on in a frigid situation, okay? But we're warmed up now, okay? So we're gonna have a fun time today. Just real quick, before he starts, show you about ECAUS. We've got Mr. Brandon Wiley with Northwest Linemen College right here. He's gonna be coming in January, and he's the Power Delivery Programs Vice President for Northwest Linemen College. He's been with them, I think, earlier this year. He just started his position there, but he's going to be talking about why, the most important question in his safety presentation, January the 24th. All right, so be here for that. Just get the live line link, and you can participate. We'll record it, and all the ECAUS members, Electric Culture of Safety, they receive these recordings, and you guys archive them, and you hold on to them and share them with your linemen forever. All right? You can contact me right here at safetytraining@bieremeters.com if you want to participate, if you want to speak, if your company wants to endorse ECAUS. You can see Northwest Linemen College, they just endorsed ECAUS recently. So we've got quite a few folks that are coming on board since February when Danny Rains opened us up with 002 and his presentation, which we have all the recordings. You can ask for his, but just email me if you want to participate, if you want to speak, you want to endorse, and you want to register and become a member of ECAUS, Electric Culture of Safety. Electric Culture of Safety, real quick, there's one thing, a theme that's been going on for the last couple months. I've been hearing from folks all around the country, and that what this is doing, what this is accomplishing together as a line team is we're bringing unity. We're bringing unity between the contractors, the cooperatives, the municipalities, the investor owns, and we're coming together as one line team talking about safety and sharing openly and freely. So ECAUS is all voluntary. Mr. Dwight Miller, he drove down here from Ohio yesterday, and he's doing this freely and willingly, and that's what this is about. There's no money changing hands. It's just giving back to our most excellent industry. So with that said, introduce Mr. Dwight Miller.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. And I'm not doing it freely. I am on the clock for Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. So anyway, I want to thank them for allowing me to come here. So anyway, I do want to talk about the importance of unity. It is a problem as far as the divisions that we have, because I mean, I am so proud of what Bierer is doing here. I just really am, and I think it's amazing, because I mean, it's like taking all the different pieces of the contractors, of the municipals, of the utility guys. I used to be a contractor, and I would call the utility guys, we would call them utility pukes. You know, I mean, so I mean, it's just there's arrogance at times. Pride is great, but then pride is, as long as it doesn't cause division. You know, I mean, I think that it's just a fine line. And so anyway, so I do work for Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. This is also brought to you by Come Along Safety. This is actually my new company that I have just begun. And so consultation services, program development, that type of thing, as I look into going into retirement. So anyway, with that, you know, isn't this kind of what we do right here? It's like we gauge, okay? So today we're going to talk about gauges. And I'm going to introduce myself here in a little bit, but as far as like when we look at something like right now, you guys are gauging me. You're gauging me to see if I'm worth listening to for the next hour or whatever I talk. So we measure everything. And so one of the things that we measure is we're constantly measuring ourselves against others. And so it's like, yeah, well, who's the best? Well, of course it's us, right? You know, I mean, so we're the best. That's what we think. And so anyway, it's a problem. We have union, we have non-union. I've been both. We have contractor, we have utility. And then with utilities, we have co-ops, we have municipals, we have investor-owned utilities. But aren't we all just lineman brothers? Isn't that what it is? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that who we are? I mean, we see one person go to work from one place to another place, and then we agree to be brothers. But until then, it's like you have different denominations in church, right? You know, it's like, no, it's not okay to have those barriers. And so anyway, that's just what we want to be. This is my family, okay? I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a grandfather. This is why I do what I do, is because I have an amazing family. I love this family. And then this is my co-op family, okay? This is our department. This is one of the most amazing departments in the entire nation. Extremely high performing, extremely high excellence. And so anyway, with that, I just want to thank them for everything that they do. Peggy right there, she's going to be retiring in February. And then it's going to be back to 8 of us. So anyway, it's just an awesome team to be a part of. So one of the things, so you see this picture right here, okay? You got 2 meters. We used to, back in the day when I worked at the co-op, when we had electromechanical meters, what we would do is if we would get a high bill complaint, we would take one of these things out. And what it was a meter that was properly calibrated in a socket that was actually in series, okay, that we would actually end up putting in series with the other meter, okay? And so anyway, I never did personally because I would always really want to help them with the problem because it was never the meter, right? You guys that have done it, it's like, it's never the meter. I mean, I didn't do meters much, but I did it some, okay? Typically, I was out on the line crew when I worked, okay? But anyway, what we would do is we would see if the meter was properly calibrated. And so that's really all I want to do today. It's like, do we need a recalibration of some of our meters? And it's not only the calibration, but also as far as what we're looking at. I mean, I think that's a big part today of really what I want to get across. It's like, what are we looking at? How are we looking at it, and what are we looking at? Because really, here's what I want the objective to be. Is perception not reality? I mean, you think about that. Perception is reality. And the way that we see things, it absolutely ends up being our actions. The way that we perform based on how we think. And so really that's what I just want to look at and say, yeah, this is the objective, to understand the way that we see things. Are we properly calibrated? Are we looking at the right thing so that we can actually get our safety programs where they need to be in the field, in the office, up management. We're gonna talk about different things today. I'll show you the agenda here. But just for an example, okay? So say that you have a small utility with 25 linemen, okay? You got a small utility with 25 linemen, and they're looking at themselves, and how do they gauge typically whether they're safe or not? Oh, we're good, man. We haven't had a contact in, 5 years. We haven't had a fatality in 30 years. So heck yeah, safety, that's us, man. We're right on top of it. Well, let me tell you something. As an average, if you're going to be average, the average, there's 18.6 families per 100,000 that end up going down in our industry. And besides that, with the contacts and with the lost limbs, it's many more than that. But you think about that. If you have 18.6 fatalities per 100,000 workers, if you have a shop of 25 guys, you should only be killing a guy every 215 years if you're average. Is that crazy or what? But so this is what happens as we look at the wrong things and we look at it incorrectly. And so to understand these things, it is critical that we make sure that we're gauging ourselves in a proper way. And so anyway, with that, here's where we're going, okay? Here's the roadmap today, guys. The first thing we're going to talk about is gauging for shortcuts, okay? We want to go several places for that, really going to concentrate. This is going to be mostly for the linemen here, but it's also going to be some for safety, for management there, okay? The second thing we're going to is we're going to gauge for qualifications using job titles, okay? Oh, and by the way, I did want to say this is going to be an article in Incident Prevention Magazine in the February-March issue, hopefully, if I meet my deadline on submitting it to Kate. So anyway, with that, the third thing we're going to talk about is gauging for the margin for human error. Okay, huge. That is absolutely huge. Gauging for the margin for human error. And then finally, we're going to wrap up and we're going to gauge for overall safety performance. Okay, so that's where we're going, guys. So the first thing, just say we want to gauge for shortcuts. It's like, okay, what does this look like? So let me tell you who I am a little bit first, okay? So I started in the industry in 1985. I worked contractors for 9 years. In my first 18 months, I saw 2 contact accidents. I had to rescue one guy with the shirt burn off his back. I almost dropped him during the rescue. It haunted me. After that rescue, I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. Every time my eyes would go closed, I would see the whole thing again. For 2 weeks. It was one of the most traumatic things you could ever imagine going through. And when you talk about practicing, I hear Billy Martin talking about practicing. It's like, oh man, I'm telling you, unless you practice. I mean, because everything is just out of control in an accident once something happens. So anyway, I actually made the rescue. He was messed up. I thought he was going to die. He didn't. Thank God he didn't die. That changed the trajectory of my career. After I saw the second contact, I was going to quit line work. I had planned to quit line work. I'm going, if this is it, if I'm going to end up being that guy, then I really don't want to stay in this business. And so anyway, I had a seasoned journeyman lineman. He came up to me, and he said, Dwight, he looked at me in the eye. He said, Dwight, he said, you shouldn't do this. He said, you need to stay in the business. And we don't know the power of our words sometimes. You think about the things that you say, especially to younger people, younger workers. It's like we don't understand the power of our words. Those words are why I stayed in, because he saw something in me. And I thank God that he did. So anyway, so one of the things, I just wanted to tell you the rest of who I was, okay? So anyway, above all, I'm a Christian, okay? That is what my life is. My faith is more important than anything in my life. My family's second. And so anyway, I am a Christian, and I thank God for Bierer Meters and for ECOS. It's amazing to be a part of this, okay? So anyway, so that was kind of my upbringing. I got, in 1985, I started Contractors. It took me 9 years to get on with the co-op. Got on with the co-op in 1994, and then local co-op, and then at that co-op, they weren't a whole lot safer than the mom and pop contractors. And the reason I'm telling this is because I'm going to talk about small here in a second, okay? So anyway, but ended up working for a co-op, 1994. 2007, I ended up going to the statewide. I took over the apprentice program at that time. And then in 2013, I became director. And so it's been, I started in January 2013. So I've been doing this right at 10 years. And so anyway, love what I do. So anyway, I want to go to this gauging for shortcuts, okay? So I want to talk about a chilling trend. So over a recent 5-year period, there was the fatal injury rate increased 57% for a particular group. What do you think? What group? What kind of group do you think? What kind of company group? Then, when safety is supposed to be increasing, right? What kind of company group is increasing 57% over a recent 5-year period? That's pretty insane. And it is small construction companies. That information comes from the Center for Construction Research and Training, the CPWR. 57%. So with that, and it was actually from 2011, 2016, they went up, and this is all construction, okay? They went up per 100,000 workers, they ended up going up to 24.4. I just want you to look at the difference between these numbers here. This is the size of companies with employees, okay? So you have 1 to 19 employees, you have 20 to 99 employees, and then 100 plus employees. And so you look at this 1 to 19 employees, but I'm going to say small municipals. I'm going to say small co-ops. I'm going to say mom and pop contractors. That's what we're looking at here. I just want to talk about the challenge of small, because you face a challenge that is different. And you say, what is it? Is it resources? Is it training? Is it tools and material? I'd say probably training a lot. I'd say tools and materials, maybe, maybe not. It depends. I think it's kind of hit and miss there. Resources altogether, yes. But there's just a lot of things that we end up missing as small companies. But I'll tell you, one of the things, and by the way, it doesn't have to be small, okay? Please don't take me that I'm going to pick on small, because it's like, this happens to everybody. This picture was taken by an office worker, okay? That was where their power had gone out and they saw someone, it just didn't look right to them. This is a local investor-owned utility lineman. As far as we know, we believe that he refused the bayonet transformer just like that. This is an investor-owned utility lineman right here. No hard hat, no FR. I mean, you can see all he has is a shotgun. That's what it appears like anyway. So you don't have to be small, okay? So anyway, but here's what I want to say about small, okay? We end up in silos. And so what we end up with is we end up looking at ourselves. We end up gauging ourselves by ourselves. And so when our exposure to others is limited, then we compare ourselves to others, and we kind of do it like this. We say, you know what? They're all kind of like that. We're all right. Let me tell you a story, something that happened to me one time. It was back in about 2009. So I get I'm running the apprentice program at the time, okay? I get a call, and anyway, I get a call from a utility. We were doing municipals and contractors at the time. I get a call from a utility. They say, hey, we have a guy coming to class this week, and something's not right. And we want to know what's wrong. They knew that he would open up to me. So anyway, so he comes in. I say, hey, we got to talk, man. So I say, what's going on? And he said, yeah, you got time? I said, yep, I got time right now. So he sat down. He explained to me everything that was going on. He said, everything I'm learning here at school, we're doing nothing at work like that. And he started explaining to me the work methods they were using. And I was stunned, honestly. And so anyway, I call back to the co-op and I say, to the utility, and I say, here's the deal. I say, this is what's going on, and he's right. It is a big problem, and he doesn't feel safe. And the problem is that he doesn't feel safe. Well, ended up having a meeting at that utility, face to face. And I got face to face where the operations manager was and I were discussing this. And the crazy thing was I started actually teaching back in 1990. So I've been teaching one way or another for what, 32 years now. And so anyway, but I was teaching ALBAT. I was teaching the NJATC. I taught it for 5 years. So anyway, he was actually one of my students in the NJATC. And so anyway, so it was pretty crazy, you know. So here we are face to face, and he put his finger up in my face. He says, Dwight, let me tell you something. He said, if you think anybody does it right, he said, you are living in a dream world. I said, wow. Living in a dream world. I said, well, all I know is that you'd have probably been fired at several places that I'm aware of with the work practices that you are endorsing at this place. So anyway, and it's very sad, you know, but it is the thought that nobody does it right. You know, there's this, and I'm hoping Brent, this looks familiar to him. Here's the saying, okay? When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. That's out of the Bible. That's truth. That's the Word of God. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. And so what happens with small companies a lot of times is they just think everybody is high risk. So in other words, we're going to talk about how safety policy versus work practices, how they line up. That's going to be in our third session, in our third part, okay? But it's a huge part of it. And so understanding it's like, wow. So it's like understanding what are we gauging ourselves to? Now this crew here, they didn't believe they needed to cover the neutral, okay? So this crew, this is a very small utility, okay? Definitely falls into the 1 to 19 range, okay? And so anyway, they didn't believe they needed to cover the neutral. And so we get out there on the job and we're astounded to what we see, you know? Like, wow, we can see lots of cover on the primary. Where's your cover up on the neutral? By the way, FYI, okay? 2023 NESC, okay? So here's what it says, okay? When exposed, grounded lines, conductors, neutrals, parts, messengers, or guys are in the work area, they shall be guarded or insulated. I mean, I have the privilege of sitting on NASC Subcommittee 8. To me and another guy from Mississippi, we represent the 900 co-ops in the United States. And it's a real honor and a privilege to be on that subcommittee, honestly. We talked about this rule for a long time. When it was actually partly in there in the 2017, it's much plainer now. And so there's no doubt about it. And so is it consensus for some states? Yes, it is consensus for some states. It's law. It's state law for most states. Some it will begin January 2023. If you don't know what the NASC means to you, you need to know, okay? Because I was just speaking in Kentucky last week. You know, Kentucky, they automatically adopt the new edition every time it comes out. And so, you know, so there it was going to be, you know, January 2023. For us in Ohio, it's probably going to be more like 2026, 2027, when we get to 2023. We're still under 2017. So anyway, but it's important to understand. And also, there is one other really important change in the Part 4 NASC. And I don't know, it's just curious, you know, I mean, you guys that are watching this video, do you know what that is? Because there's actually 6 topics now that you have to talk about in job briefings. So you got your how we solve every problem, right? Your H, your hazards, W, your work procedures, S, your special precautions, E, your energy source controls, P, your PPE. What is the 6th one? The 6th one that you have to now begin talking about is information necessary to respond to emergencies. That's your 6th topic. Okay, so anyway, some of you guys, you might be fine, you might be good right now with doing that and have those things in place, but it is something that is going to be, that is new into the code. So anyway, with that, you know, we have a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys, and it's really important that we understand that it's gravely important to understand why to do something. It's one thing to make someone change behaviors. And they have to change those behaviors because they're made to. But it's another thing when they change their behaviors because they know that that's what's going to get them back alive home at the end of the day. It is extremely important to understand why. And I see that's actually what they're going to be talking, what he's going to be talking about at the next meeting. There's another thing that I talk about a lot, and it is the importance of storytelling. So we're getting a lot of new guys in the industry, okay? As our industry gets safer, what are the guys going to see less of? They're going to see less big accidents. They're going to see less arc flashes. They're going to see less contacts. Hopefully they never see any. But when you don't see something, does it really exist? Does it really exist? If you don't see it, does it really exist? Because that's what's going through their mind. I'm telling you, it is so important for storytelling. We put out a talk, a safety talk every week that tells a story. It's an incident. We put out an incident every week. We put that out. We've been putting them out every week since July 2018. And so anyway, that's a lot of talks, but it's all about storytelling. The guys have to be able to understand why they're doing something, and they have to be able to envision. When you tell a story, what happens is a word picture is created in their minds. And so it's powerful. It's not just words, okay? But it's a word picture that's created. Just like you see a picture here. That's what's going on in their mind when you tell stories to the younger guys. They have to have your stories. It is a huge part of training that often gets left behind. And how do you do that? It's like, well, you get out there to the job. You tell a story about what happened one time when you did a job just like that. You take the time and tell the young guys, you know, we're going to talk about attrition here and what that's doing to our industry. But I'm telling you, we can't effectively change behaviors unless we what? Unless we begin to challenge beliefs. And it is the beliefs that gets us in trouble. The beliefs get us in trouble. It's what we believe and it's why we believe it that makes us do what we do. And so, yeah, we can make people change their behaviors by saying, by golly, you're going to do this or else you're going to get fired. You're going to do this or this is going to be... It's like, but what about what they believe? We want them to know the why. We want them to believe and to understand why they're doing it. So I'm going to ask you a question this morning, okay? So when you're out working and push comes to shove, you're out working, push comes to shove, I want to ask you something. What's your movable object? Okay, so all right, so right now, you know, we were talking recently in our department. We got a lot of stuff going on right now, and it's like we were talking about what's the movable object. I mean, we got a lot going on. And so we identified the movable object. This thing here can be done away with. So I just want to take this out to the job and say, when push comes to shove out on the job, what is the movable object? So in other words, when time becomes a crunch, so is it outage times? Okay, we're going to have to take the hit on this one. It's the outage times. Or it's like, no, we got to keep those outage times down. Is it costs? Maybe costs are going to, maybe that's the movable object. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going to have to take the hit on this, on costs. Or is it grounding? Is it maybe cover up? Or is it maybe what it should be is our pride? Because when we go out to do a job, isn't there a certain amount of where we want to get a certain job done? We want to get a certain job done, and it's like we want to do it within a certain time frame, and when we don't get that done, it hurts our pride, it hurts our ego at times. And so is this the movable object? If this isn't the movable object for you, pride, it should be. Okay, so let's put this to a picture, okay? What I want to ask you now another question, and ask you if safety is something extra. Okay, is safety something extra, or is it actually part of what you do? And I want to give some pictures here also, okay? Now think about that. Is it something extra? Why? Because we got to find out if it's your movable object. That's what I want to find out. I want to find out if this is your movable object. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so what you have is you have wire down right now, okay? You got wire down, you got your self-induced time pressures, your internal time pressures right here. You got a line down, and you know that you got to clear that line, and you know that you got to test and ground that line. You got to get your visual open, you got to get your tag on, and then you got to get your, and then you got to test and ground that line. And you're feeling that time crunch. And so the time, it's ticking. There goes the line clearance. There goes your testing and grounding. Time's running down, all that's left is the line, and maybe it's all that's left is this. Is safety something extra? I mean, think about it, okay? Let's look at this. First of all, let's crunch the time clock, right? Let's just shatter the time clock. Because we have those internal pressures. Part of being a lineman is going to be to deal with those. I had to deal with those after I figured out it was a problem with me. I had to figure out that it was crazy. I had an epiphany one day. I'm going, you know what? You ain't near as safe as what you think you are. I had that epiphany. And so anyway, for me, you know what it looked like? Here's what it looked like to me. It looked to me like I had to go into work the next day, and I was working just with one other guy at the time. We were doing a lot of stuff, just two-man crew at the co-op. Anyway, and I told him, I said, listen, I just realized that I'm not near as safe as what I think I am, because I always get in a hurry, because I like to get a lot done. And so I end up getting in a hurry. And I said, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do for me. I'm going to ask you that if you see me getting in a hurry, I'm going to ask you to call me out. And so anyway, so I gave myself some accountability, right? I gave myself some accountability, and then I'll never forget the next time when I started feeling it. And I started getting it, and I'm going, oh crap, he's going to call me out. And you know what? That was the day. I had to keep on, and I would actually, what I would tell myself, I would say, slow down, Miller, slow down, Miller, slow down, Miller. That's actually what I would tell myself. Crazy. But that was what I had to do, okay? So anyway, so let's crunch the time clock. Let's just get rid of that thing internal. We have to deal with that. If you're a conscientious lineman, you have that time clock. You do. Now, there can be times when maybe that is being pushed onto you. But I want you to look at this, okay? So now we have our line down. We have our line clears. We have our testing and grounding. This is what it looks like to be separate. It's negotiable. I can get rid of this. What does it look like to be a part of it? Now, I just want you to watch it. It all just becomes one. You know, it's kind of like a salad. So Brent, when we went out last night, I got a salad, okay? I got a Caesar salad. They put the dressing in the lettuce, okay? So it would have been pretty tough to take that dressing out of the salad. Now sometimes you can get you get your dressing on the side, and then you have your lettuce, right? You have two different pieces. But when it's all together, it's like it's part of it. You can't remove it. You can't take out the line clearing and the testing and grounding out of this. It's all mixed together. It is all one. So I want to ask you, is safety something extra, or is it integrated in everything you do? Because when we start looking at something, and it is a problem with kind of like identifying operations and then identifying safety as two different things. Because operations is safety, it is. And so, but when we identify them as two different things, it does become problematic. But this is what we want it to look like. We want them to be together. What I think the root cause of this stuff is I believe that it is the belief that safety is something extra and it can be negotiated. You can call it safety being a value and not a priority, whatever. I think that it's negotiable. It's when safety becomes negotiable, and I'm talking to the linemen right now. I'm talking to you guys out on the crew. Is safety negotiable to you guys out on the crew? Are you going to go out there and next time when it's raining, you think about when it's raining, you think about when it's nasty, when it's cold out. We got winter coming. You northern states, when we got winter coming up, we got bad weather coming. In the middle of the night, you got wire down. What's that conversation going to be in the truck when you get there? What are you going to do? What are you going to talk about? Are you going to talk about how, all right, hey, you know what? Let's just go ahead and put our rubber gloves on. It's like, there's nothing on this line. We got our visual open. We got a tag on. It's like, we don't really want to climb an extra pole and ground the load side, do we? No, we can just put our rubber gloves on. And by the way, that's not okay. That's not okay, just in case you think it is. It's not okay. It's not okay not to ground ever, okay? It's got to be part of it. So with that, there is, in the co-op world right now with NRACA, which is our mother company, okay, right now we have an initiative called Commitment to Zero Contacts. And so anyway, you're going to hear that term probably SIF, that's serious injury and fatality, or significant injury and fatality, whichever way you want to say it. It's said both ways. So anyway, and does have a definition, okay? But anyway, that has been amazing. We're actually in phase 2 of it right now. That has been crazy good. But what it does is it covers these things. It covers these most important things: line clearance, testing and grounding, gloves and sleeves, cover up. And then you got Quanta doing an amazing thing. I was actually talking to the safety director from Quanta. We had dinner one night. And anyway, and he was telling me, and he said, well, we're doing the same thing except it's called sticky. I said, really? He said, yeah, and our guys remember that term. They remember that term, sticky. I'm going to say stuff that kills you, okay? So it's stuff that kills you. So you think about that. And I want to talk to you safety directors just for a little bit, okay? You safety directors, think about your near-miss program, okay? The near-miss program you have, and actually I just learned this from Matt Edmonds from SE2 Solutions. We had our incident investigation. I did not know that with the near misses that were looked at over a period of time, anyway, that basically about 21% of the near misses. Are you getting near misses, by the way? You need to be turning them in, and you guys need to be receiving them. Linemen, you need to be turning them in. Other workers, you need to be turning them in. You guys in the office, you need to have a good, robust near-miss program. When you get those near misses, anyway, Matt was telling how there was 21% of those are actually basically sticky near misses. And it's like, those are the ones that we need to be investigating. We need to be going deep into those types of near misses. So anyway, we have to accentuate the most important things. Like we got to keep the emphasis on the most important thing. Okay, I want to tell you about 3 things that your mind gauges, okay? Our mind gauges 3 things all the time. So in other words, right now, you might be making a decision on something. You got guys that are in the field right now, and they're trying to make certain decisions as the day goes along. Their mind unconsciously is thinking about 3 things: immediacy, certainty, and high impact. And those are the things that are actually going to cause them to do something, okay? So let's take a look at some. So we got right here, we got some gauges, okay? We got, immediate, that's pretty good. It's way up there, certain, that's up there. High impact, that's up there too. This might be not grounding a line. This might be not using enough cover up. So anyway, and they're saying, well, what is the benefit to that? Well, the benefit is time. It's pretty good. It's like, man, I have pretty good total incentive with that. So that is what our mind is gauging now. You say, well, what's the buffer on that? Oh, that's really important, and that is a very good question, even though you didn't ask it. So anyway, what is the buffer? What's the buffer to what our mind is wanting? What is it? Because if you don't have a buffer that is equal to or greater than this positive outcome here, look out. If you don't have a buffer that needle, the adverse effects, the negative consequences in their minds, and I'm talking about perception. I'm talking about safety training that talks about their families. I'm talking about understanding the consequences if they take certain shortcuts. I'm talking about the expectations. You know, accountability just is lacking in so many places. And it's like, accountability, it's over talked about, because what needs to be talked about is expectations. if you have children, don't you want to tell them what the expectations are? It's like, hey, we're going to be a good, happy family here. We just don't want to step over this line, guys. Okay, understand, you can't step over this line here. If you step over that line, there's going to be problems. And so, anyway, that's the way that we need to be in our safety programs. It's like, we're going to keep our eye on the important things, and we have to make sure that the gauge of the negative consequences is greater than the positive outcome of a shortcut. I mean, that is huge. And so whichever shortcut that you're thinking about, whichever consequence you're thinking about, it has to be able to exceed that. Now, here's what I have always said. Ever since I got into training, here's what I've said. I got off the crew, got in training. Every lineman deserves this. Every person working out in the field in any high hazard job deserves this. They deserve to know that if they are intentionally violating a rule, that could kill them. And if someone pulls up, they deserve to know that that could be their last day at that place of employment. They deserve to know that. You say, well, that's no fun. I don't want that. No, of course we don't like accountability. We don't like accountability, but it's what is best. It's what is missing in a lot of places. That accountability is the expectation. The expectation is that these are totally, totally non-negotiable. Now, we also understand that there's going to be human error. Please don't misunderstand. We understand that there is human error, and that human error, I mean, it's like that is very real, and sometimes that ends up in violations. Sometimes we got to figure out, was that intentional, was it human error? And a lot of times you're going to know by the culture right off the bat whether it was intentional or not. So anyway, all right. Let's go to gauging qualifications through job titles, okay? We got journeyman. Journeyman lineman, love that title, right? It's like I saw someone posted there the other day, they said, regardless of what I ever do, I'm always going to, regard title journeyman lineman above everything, and I think that's awesome. It's like I haven't been out in the field for about 16 years now, 15, 16 years, and so anyway, and I do want to thank you guys that are out in the field. I want to thank you guys for what you guys do out in the field. So anyway, all right, with the current turnover in our industry, you think about the threats. I mean, we've heard a lot about the threats with all the turnover, right? We've heard about the experience going out the door. We've heard about all these different pieces. And it is real. I mean, when you think about it, there are a lot of threats with a lot of turnover. We are very, very young in the Ohio cooperative world. We're very young, and we're getting younger all the time. It is not slowing down at all. So anyway, with that, you say, wow, absolutely. Understanding the system, understanding so many different things. I mean, experience training is one thing. Experience is a whole different animal. It's just a whole different animal. And so to have that experience walk out the door. But I want to ask this, okay? Do we have any opportunities with it? Because here's what the reality in our industry now, what we are looking at. The reality in our industry is that we're seeing the safety metrics go down on the small stuff, okay? We're seeing the safety metrics, they're going down. Ours has been amazing. I mean, it really has. It's been amazing to see, which is awesome. But what aren't we seeing? We're not seeing the serious injuries and fatalities go down. They are straight across. I just showed you where small companies were actually going up. Small construction companies. It's like, that's terrible. I mean, that's awful that they're actually going up in this age and time. You think, I mean, I'm at Bierer right now. It's like, I was just did the tour of the facility this morning. It's like, there are so many items for safety that will help keep the crews safe out there. It's like, to live in a time like this is amazing. You know, when I started back in '85, man, oh man, with the mom and pop contractor, we didn't have diddly, you know? And so to have what we have now, yet to be able, but to be maintaining that serious injury fatality, maybe the current opportunity is that we can get rid of some bad work practices. And I'm not putting experience down at all, but here's what I want to look at, okay? The next thing I want to look at, how do we typically often rate, like you got two candidates here, okay? You got a candidate that has 0 years experience and you got a candidate that has 7 years experience. This is a qualification gauge for employability right now that we're looking at, okay? So typically, this is typically what it might look like, okay? It might look like this. You say, well, I want the experience because I need someone on call right away. I got to have someone that's going to hit the ground running, produce, that type of thing. So it's like, yeah, that's what I have to have. So with that, I want to talk about experience. So think about experience, okay? You got right here, you can see a marksman right here. I mean, he is hitting the target. That comes no other way than by shooting that arrow into that target over and over and over. Now we understand that experience will absolutely result in some things of that can be negative, okay? And we're going to talk about that. But it's very positive too. I mean, when you think about that. So I want you to think about this. Is it good or is it not so much? Okay? Let's think about that, okay? Is it good or is it not so much? Okay? So here's what I want to say to you today, okay? Experience, it produces preconceived notions of how long a particular job should take. Okay, think about that, okay? So now, someone's been doing a certain type of job, they get hired at another company. Now, in their mind, they have in their mind exactly how long that job should take, about, okay, depending on what your environment is. But they understand it's like changing out this type of pole, stringing in this type of conductor, okay, whatever it is. Now, I want you to think about that. Now, everyone watching this that works in the field, you all have this, okay? We all have this. And so my question is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Because this is the question of the day. The question of the day is it a good thing that we have preconceived notions of how long a job should take, or is it a bad thing that we have preconceived notions of how long a certain job should take? Okay, so anyway, so we're going to go on a journey here, okay? So I want you to think in your mind right now and to think, how would you define the following term? Journeyman lineman. This term is tough. And we're going to talk about how tough this term is. And we're going to talk about what this term has actually done. This term is amazing. It's amazing to have that, to have that title, journeyman lineman. But it's also tough. It also brings a lot of challenges, and it brings a lot of things that guys don't think about sometimes, okay? So anyway, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on a journey. This one here is easy, okay? We're going to just gauge some internal employees right here. You got a lineman C, a lineman B, a lineman A, okay? Journeyman lineman, you know, maybe a third-year apprentice, fourth-year apprentice, maybe a second, third-year apprentice, whatever, okay? Whatever you call them, everybody calls them something different. So anyway, so we're going to take a look at this, okay? So you got lineman C, that's pretty easy. You say, they're about 30% on our gauge. You go lineman B, we're going to call them about 68%. And then you go to a lineman A, and we're going to say, yeah, they're right, close to 100%. They're where we need them to be, okay? Yeah, they still have some growth. So there's definitely still some growth here on some things that they need to do. And so anyway, so the most qualified is very easy. That's a very easy thing to determine. It's your lineman A, it's your journeyman lineman. It's the one that has worked at your utility, it's your contractor for all this, for however many years, okay? Now, I'm going to go on a different journey now. Okay, this journey is that you have 3 candidates for job openings. Okay, you have an apprentice lineman, journeyman lineman number 1, and journeyman lineman number 2. And we are looking at hiring these guys, okay? Now let's say that you have a co-op looking, you have a contractor looking. I want to do 3 different scenarios. And you have a municipal looking. And so now, let's say, okay, well, I want to know a little bit about these guys, okay? So let's look at the apprentice lineman, what he's done, okay? This apprentice lineman, he's got 3 years experience, and he's worked all 3 years for a co-op in Ohio. There you go. I had to get us in there one way or another, okay? So he's been 3 years at a co-op in Ohio. Now you got this journeyman lineman, okay? This journeyman lineman, he has actually got 6 years experience. He's worked 3 years for an IOU in Texas, and then he's worked 3 years for a contractor in Washington. Now, I want you to think about that. He worked for a contractor in Washington. Okay, now you got journeyman lineman number 2 here, okay? This guy has 12 years experience. Okay, he's got 6 years for union contractors in Georgia, 4 years for a non-union contractor in Alabama, and then 2 years for a union contractor. He decided to get cold for some reason in Michigan, okay? I don't know why. But anyway, he went up to Michigan, okay? And he got cold for a couple years. So that's his experience, okay? So now let's look at that. Now we have 3 entities down here that are looking at hiring them. Here's what we're going to say. We're going to say that these entities, they actually did their due diligence. They actually did what you're supposed to do, which we're going to talk about. Before they hired them, they did their due diligence and they rated them in qualifications. Okay? So we're going to see who won the job. Can we do that? This is fictitious, okay? This is not to say in any way that this is who would be for you, okay? This is totally fictitious. So let's say the co-op that was hiring, we're going to say, all right, the apprentice lineman won. You're going, what? Are you kidding me? The apprentice lineman got the job? Yeah, he was the most qualified. That's crazy. You know who came in second place? Journeyman lineman number 1. Guy with 6 years. The guy came in third place? Journeyman lineman number 2 with 12 years. That's crazy. How you figure? Well, we're going to go there, okay? So now let's look at the contractor, okay? So now you got the contractor going. Now the contractor, journeyman lineman number 2, oh man, look at that. He's right where he needs to be with it. He's got everything he needs. He's got 12 years experience. He easily wins the job. Journeyman lineman number 1, he was second. He comes in about 65%. And that poor apprentice, man, he came in way behind here, you know, so he comes in at 40%. All right, now we're going to go to the municipal. Now this municipal, we're going to say it's out west. That's important, okay? And we're going to say journeyman lineman number 1 got the job. Say, how is he the most qualified? How could journeyman lineman number 2 be the most qualified for one job, the apprentice be the most qualified for another job, and now you got journeyman lineman number 1 being the most qualified for this municipal? We're going to go there, okay? In second place, it was journeyman lineman number 2, and then third place was the apprentice. You say, how you figure? Well, let's dig a little deeper, okay? So here we go, okay? I want to define the following term again. I want to go back to this. How are we going to define journeyman lineman? Very important, because we are going to put a definition to it now. So if we're going to define the term journeyman lineman, we have to be extremely specific. Why? Why do we have to be so specific? Because there are definitions out there. I mean, I understand like with the Department of Labor, I understand all the different categories. I understand the journey line erector, the journey line maintainer, you know, the journey line repair. I get all those terms, okay? But I'm saying in the scheme of things, the way that people are actually hired, okay, it is extremely important that we understand this term, and not only for the hiring entities, but also for the workers ourselves, right? And so anyway, with that, here's the way that I define it. I define it that it is a worker who, by virtue of experience and training, has demonstrated proficiency in a listed set of skills necessary to become a qualified employee as defined, okay, qualified employee, you got that? As defined by 1910-269, 1926 subpart V, for tasks expected to perform where? At a particular place of employment. Did you know that OSHA doesn't care about job titles? This is why I want to talk about it. OSHA doesn't care about job titles. All they want to know is, are you trained and have you demonstrated proficiency for the work involved? That's all it comes down to. And so the question is, what is the work involved? What are the tasks? What are the tasks expected to perform at a particular place of employment? I thank God that the co-op hired me in 1994 because I was the journeyman lineman number 2. Okay, and I'm going to show you his qualifications. Okay, so here we go. Okay, you want to see the qualifications? Here we go. We got our 3-year apprentice. Okay, our 3-year apprentice. Here's his qualifications. He did 3 years experience for co-op in Ohio. He's only got 3 years. That's it. But here was his skill set. Here's what he was working on. He was working on overhead distribution construction, underground construction, live line rubber gloving. Okay, so he was rubber gloving, live line switching. He just started this, by the way. Live line switching on underground. He knew how to do that. They had a lot of underground at his co-op. Substations and controls, absolutely. He was actually helping do the inspections at the substations. He knew how to work controls very well. He was doing metering, he knew how to do polyphase metering along with CTs and PTs, and then troubleshooting. Now, he didn't do things like this: overhead transmission, substation construction, hot sticking, bare hand, network systems. Okay, he didn't do those. Okay, so that's his skill set. That's what he could do. Now, let's look at the 6-year journeyman. Now, the 6-year journeyman, remember what he did? So he was working for 6 years. He had 6 years experience, 3 years for IOU in Texas, 3 years for a contractor in Washington. Fictitious, remember this is fictitious. We're going to say he did overhead distribution, he did overhead transmission, and then he did live line hot sticking, and then he did underground distribution, and then live line rubber gloving, and then troubleshooting, okay? He didn't do metering, he didn't do substations and controls, he didn't do live line switching, substation construction, bare hand, or network. He didn't have those, okay? And I'm not saying this is the list. I'm saying these are some things, okay? These are some things, and you know that there are lots of things that these things can be broke out into, each one of them, okay? Now let's look at the 12-year guy, because this was me. When I got hired in 1994, this is who I was, okay? I had 9 years experience, okay? This guy had 12, okay? Now look, overhead distribution, overhead transmission, live line gloving, that's it. That's his skill set. That is what he has demonstrated proficiency in. But yet we hire somebody like a 12-year guy, and then why? Then let's say it's the co-op. The co-op says, well, I want the 12-year guy. And so anyway, so they get the 12-year guy and they say, hey, we need you to go out into the substation. So listen to this. This actually happened to a municipal in Ohio. It was municipal that actually came to us for training, okay? They hired a contractor. And so anyway, so they get on, they get this contractor, they're working on a job and they say, hey, we need you to go to the substation and go put this line on one shot. So he goes into the substation and he's sitting there in front of those controls. What do you think he's saying? Do you think he's calling back and saying, hey, I'm not sure what to hit here? Now, we all know that's what he should have done, right? So you know what he did? he just started hitting controls. He gets a call. What are you doing there? Did you shut the circuit down? He had shut the circuit down. He didn't know what he was doing. Do you think if you hire somebody that doesn't have the skill set that you're looking for, and you expect them to have that skill set, are you waiting for them to say that I don't know? Or have you already taken care of that ahead of time? Because that's huge. That's going to be huge. And so anyway, yeah, this was me, okay? I had to learn a whole lot of things after I got on with the co-op. I would love to have a good apprentice program. So the most qualified is who? The most qualified is whoever has demonstrated proficiency in the work practices involved. That's it. So we're talking about the work practices involved. So what are the work practices involved at your place? That's what we have to have. Now I'm talking, there needs to be a demonstrated set of proficiency skills, okay? There needs to be a set of those. They need to be checked off. They need to be on what the progress is on each one of them as they go through those things. And so anyway, but I do want to show you this, okay? And so, well, before we go, the synopsis of that whole thing is that gauging qualifications through titles, it is only appropriate when it is accompanied by a set of confirmed skills. I didn't just say a set of skills, but a set of confirmed skills. So I want to talk about confirmed skills, okay? So anyway, why? Because every work experience is different. It's all different. Every work experience is different. So I mean, you think about Bierer here, okay? Think about the guys that work here at Bierer, and then you think about maybe you go, okay, well, go over to another company, and then I'll know exactly what. Well, they're going to have different stuff, right? They're going to have different stuff to work with. It's going to look different. And so every work experience is different. It's really important to understand. Such a simple concept, but I'm telling you, the toughest thing right now going across the United States is the term journeyman lineman and the expectations that go along with it. It is causing a lot of issues right now. And so anyway, I want to tell a story, and I just found this out. There was a utility just last weekend. They had some guys quit. And so they ran out of guys to go on call. They hired a contractor to go out and do troubleshooting that may or may not have been, and I would say probably may not have been, ever trained with troubleshooting. And he was and took one of their guys and then took one of the guys from that utility. Isn't that crazy? It's really sad, but that's what happens when we don't understand qualifications. It's not about job titles, it's about what are you qualified for, okay? So, you know the number one reason people get hired? What you can do. What do you think the number one reason people get fired is? Think about that. So you get hired for what you do. You're going through this resume, right? You say, yeah, I want to get this on my resume and everything. Well, why do people get fired? The number one reason people get fired is because of lack of character. That's why. So when you look at that and you say, wow, you know what? I'm going to go back here, you know. It's like, wow, what is your employability? You got your skill set here, maybe your character here. That's a problem. That's a real problem. And so I'm going to say, employers, what do you measure when you hire? I mean, both of these should be super important. I know that some of you do a really good job. Some of you are saying, I have got to get someone to get me through where I'm at right now. So I got to have the skill set now. Yeah, the character isn't where we want it. That could be a problem. That can be a real problem infecting your organization, especially if you have a good culture. So I want to go back to the 0 years and 7 years with that thought. Now you go back to that, look at this now. It may end up like this. You may end up with a guy that he's going to be a 30, 40 year guy, and he comes straight off the farm. The guy knows how to use tools. He can catch on doing what you tell him to do. He wants to be a part of it. And so anyway, or you could have your 7-year guy that maybe is not near as desirable. And so anyway, it's like, yeah, our employability gauge really needs to be very good, okay? It needs to improve. Now understand, a hiring employer, you do have to confirm the skill set either before or after hiring. That is a requirement. That is an OSHA requirement. Okay, they have to demonstrate proficiency. We just gave that rule, okay? Now, they have a note then to that rule. And they say, for an employee, this is verbatim, for an employee with previous training, an employer may determine that that employee has demonstrated the proficiency required by this paragraph using the following process. You can confirm the training, you can test for understanding, and you can supervise for proficiency. That's a great thing to do, and that's actually what we do. One of the things we do at our training facility is we do assessments more than, we do tons of assessments. We assess guys that are brand new, and we assess guys that have been through a pre-apprentice program, and we assess journeyman linemen, we assess apprentices, and basically it's like, what do they need? Because what you have to figure out, if you're a company, or if you're a utility, a contractor or utility, what it is your job to do, it is your job to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to make sure that you do these three things so that he doesn't get hurt out on the job before you understand what his skill set is and before you confirm exactly what he can do safely and what he can't do. So those are things that should be done, okay? So anyway, gauging qualifications through job titles. I want to go to gauging margin for human error. People are fallible, true or false? That's an easy one, right? So, all right, so if people are fallible, how does that fit in, okay? Now we know that some people are more fallible than others. Now, human error is a real problem. Now this morning, for me personally, I had a human error, okay? I've been shaving for about 40 years now, and yet I still got a chunk of my neck out, okay? How do I do that, Human error, okay? It was just bad, okay? I just got a chunk of my neck, and so it took me a while before that blood would stop, okay? I make errors, and so do you. And we make lots of them. I'm not going to get into the numbers. I'm going to let the other guys that are really good at that stuff. But we all make errors, and it is a huge issue. We have to allow for it. Okay, so gauging margin for human error. You think about what is safety, okay? So there you go, you football fans. What is it? By the way, I'm a Browns fan, so you can feel sorry for me. You can send me gifts and everything like that. As a Browns fan, it's terrible. It's unbelievable to be caught as a Browns fan, but I've been ever since I've been a child. So anyway, one way to define safety, you could say this, okay? I want you to digest this, okay? One way to define safety is say finding exposure and then consistently working to reduce it. Okay, so you think about that. Finding exposure and consistently working to reduce it. All right, and then thus increasing what? Your margin for human error. This is really, really important. So we need to find the exposure, continually reduce it. Why? Because we want to increase the margin for human error because we know that we're human. We know that we're going to make mistakes. And so I want to get into this and say, wow, what does this look like? This is cool stuff, okay? So anyway, so here's where we're going. We're going to look at the margin for human error. We're going to look at a weak safety culture, increasing it, and then a strong safety culture. So here we go. The margin for human error, okay, formula. Here we go. Pretty simple. It's the hazards that you face out in the field, and then you mix that in with your work practices. So that together, it produces your margin for error, okay? It produces whether it's small or whether it's large. Take the hazards and the work practices, okay? So with that, you got, let's look, see, well, what does that look like with a weak safety culture? Well, with a weak safety culture, is, for one thing, the safety rules and the work practices, they don't match. So in a weak culture, if you have an incident, what is typical after an incident happens? One of the things that is the most typical is they'll add another rule. Okay, I want you to look at this now, okay? This is really important. These are the work practices. This is what's happening. This is the standard, okay? And they say, oh, we have to bump up the rules. Now you tell me, do you have to bump up the rules here? It looks to me like we got problems other places. We don't have work practices that match our current rules. We don't need another rule. This is the needle that has to move. Okay, that's what we get in a weak culture. And so also, there's another element, and it's the hazards, okay? It's the threat. Now, the hazards are not understood. Now, we got a lot of young guys. I talked about the young guys out in the field right now. Think about the young guys out in the field. Think about what they haven't seen, okay? Now, yeah, they hear about it. They can go onto YouTube. They can see some things. But in reality, there's a lot of hazards when you're young that you still don't understand. And the reality, okay, and the other piece of that understanding in a weak culture is management. It might be the safety guy. It might be management where it's like they don't understand. It's like we don't understand. Here's what we think we're dealing with. So think about this. You got management that is looking at buying a Bierer tool, okay? And so let's say it's one of your highest dollar tools, and so they're talking about it, okay? Management's talking about it. They're talking about whether to get this tool or not. Now, here's what's going through their mind, is this right here, okay? This is going through their mind. The reality is this, here's what's going through their mind. They're going, wow, do we really need that? I don't really see the need for it. And over here we're going, yes, we need this. You know, it's really important, as you know, especially in this day and age, that we make a case for what we need in the field. That's super important. It's like we do it intelligently. You know, it's like linemen need to be able to make the case. They need to be able to write stuff down, make a case, and make an intelligent case for what they need out in the field, because this right here is an issue. It's like, if you haven't done the work, I'm not putting down anybody that hasn't done the work. You got to have those people. But what I'm saying is, it's our job. It's our job as linemen. It's our job as safety professionals to make sure that management understands the hazards in the field. They have to understand them. And it's our job to make sure. And as far as the people in the field, it is actually our job to make sure that they understand those too. And that we don't put them in charge of things until they get this needle moved. We have to have those things match, okay? So anyway, with that, here's what it kind of looks like, okay? So you got this fictitious margin for error right here it's built on. This is the safety on our X and Y axes. We have safety right here, okay? Down here on this line, we have our perceived threats to safety. So these are the hazards down here. This is our safety policy. These are our safety rules. These are the hazards, okay? Now, this line here is what we call drift, okay? This is the actual work practices in the field. And these are the actual hazards, okay? Remember how the hazards were different than the perception? The perceived hazards are down here. And then you have the rules. And so you think about management looking at that again, okay? They're going, well, we have these rules. We have, we have these hazards. And so they're making decisions based on possibly wrong information. But what we call this is drift. This is a real problem, okay? Because what we're looking at is we're looking at a very margin of human error right here. This is very small, a very narrow margin for human error. It's very, very small right there. You know, and the crazy thing about it is that weak culture, they don't want the truth. They're afraid. They don't want the truth. You want to know if you're a strong culture or a weak culture? Here's a great way to determine it. Is to find out, do I do everything I can to find blind spots in my safety program? Do I pull everything that I can? Do I pull, no matter how bad it makes me look, especially as management, no matter how bad it makes me look as management, I want to do everything I can to get as much information to find out what my culture is like so that I can actually make a difference, okay? So now, with that, okay, we're going to move on. You say, well, how do you increase that? Well, the formula is pretty easy, okay? Because what we got to do is we got to move some things. We got to move the actual, and it's got to match the perceived. And then we got up here, we got to get some accountability here. Do we agree with that? Can we all agree that we have to have some accountability and that we can't have work practices that don't match our safety policy? And so what we have to do is we have to move some things. We got to get rid of our drift. How do you do that? We just make the expectations known, number one. And we make sure that we understand that there is accountability and that we can't be doing this. This is totally not acceptable. So let's say, what does a strong culture look like, okay? Here's what it looks like. Strong culture, you got rules and you got work practices, and they're all the same. You say, no way. If you don't believe it, then you need to be watching some people that you're not watching right now. And I'm serious on that. I really am. And so it's like, you need to get out a little bit, and you need to look at utilities. You need to look at contractors that are doing it right, because there are lots of them out there that are doing it right. It is a totally different industry than when I started back in '85. And it's amazing what the safety programs that are out there right now. It is amazing to see. And there are lots of utilities, and there are lots of contractors that actually have this condition right here. So anyway, and then we have to get this thing matching. So we have this strong culture, and it's like, yeah, we get it. As management, we get it, man. We understand that the line clearance and the grounding, that's all mixed in with that line down, and there is no separating. We understand that it is hazardous. We understand that it's like, man, one thing, and you don't have another chance. You get one chance, you know. Get back home at the end of the day with all your limbs. So anyway, with that, here's what it looks like. Here's what it should look like right here. So you should have your work practices. You're going to vary some. You know what this variance is? That's because you sped on your way to work this morning, or you sped when you were in the company car. because your rules say that you will follow all local rules, you know, all the road rules and everything. It's like, yeah. So you're going to have a little bit there, but we're gonna say for the most part it matches really good. And then we're actually going to have our hazards are actually going to match what we think. Now that moved up. You notice how that moved up? So we don't have a ton, you know, but we understand what that margin is now. And the other thing is that strong culture, it works out hard to seek out truth, man. I love it. So anyway, so that's gauging margin for human error. All right, just about done. I want to talk about and finish up with this. I want to gauge overall safety performance, okay? So it's like, how do you gauge overall safety performance? And this is more to the safety director, to the manager. How do you gauge your overall safety performance? So one of the things is that, what do you guys think about this saying right here? What gets measured gets done. Do you think that's true? How do we measure things? So, all right, as linemen, myself, we don't really measure things with graphs a lot of times, okay? We don't measure things really with the gauges like what we're seeing today. We don't measure things like that. We measure things by talking about them, okay? By asking about them. So you think about that. What do you talk about? So I want to put this graphic in front of you, okay? We have safety, we have cover up, we have costs, we have rubber gloves, we have production outage times, grounding. What's important? What is this guy asking about? Because what you ask about is what you're going to get. That's really important to understand. It's like a good lineman, a good field worker, they're very conscientious, okay? They're very conscientious and they want to do a really good job, especially if they like their boss. They want to do a great job for their boss. And it's like they're going to do everything they can to please you. And now if they don't like it, it might be different, you know? But if you talk about something, I'll give an example. So in my situation, my boss, he's huge on safety. My boss is awesome on safety. Doug Miller, he is awesome on safety. So anyway, but then also something else that's really important to him is the budget. It's like, I'm kind of stinky on the budget, okay? I'm just kind of not very good at it. I have tried so hard to do better on the budget. Why? Because it matters to him. Because I want to please him. I want to do what's important to him. I want to make him, you know, happy with my performance. And it's like, isn't that what we all do? Someone that cares, a good employee. That's what a good employee is going to do. They're going to do everything they can. So if you're sitting there and you're talking about outage times all the time, okay? That's the main focus. Hey guys, you guys are doing great, man. You know, our outage times are down 10% this year. That is awesome. Or is it, hey guys, you know what? Man, when I went out and saw a crew this week, it's like, that was amazing what I saw. I mean, it's like, you guys are just doing the job right every time. You had no idea I was coming, and it's like that extra cover up that you needed up there, you had it covered. Even though it was a pain to cover up, you had it done. You had everything in place that you needed to have done. That is awesome. That is amazing. I'm telling you, what gets measured gets done. And the way that we measure things is we talk about them. We ask about them. We're constantly, that's who we are. So what's important? You know, one of the things that we don't see enough is we don't see enough conversations with management and field workers talking about safety. It's interesting because when we do our observations, okay, when we do what we call a RESAP observation, what will happen is in these RESAP observations, what we see is we see that when we do our interviews, we see the co-ops that have lots of those conversations. They're always talking about safety. They're always having these safety conversations. And then we see ones that don't. And they get really nervous when you start talking about these things. You start asking them questions, they start getting really nervous. It's like, wow, you know, telling you what gets measured gets done, okay? So now, I'm going to finish with this, gauging overall safety performance. Okay, so here we go. Here we got some injury rates, okay? Injury rates are good. They're fine, okay? They have their place. Okay, I got three of them here, okay? I got the DART rate, I got the TRIR, the total recordable incident rate, and I have the vehicle accident rate, okay? Total vehicle accident rate. Those are three safety metrics. They are what they are, and we'd like to get those things down. But this can be a problem, okay? It can be a problem if we focus on them. And that's really what I want to talk about, okay? I want to talk about focusing on injury rates. This is a huge issue, okay? Why? Because first of all, these injury rates, they're reactive. So is that what we want our safety programs to be? Do we want our safety programs to be reactive, or do we want them to be proactive? We want them to be proactive. We don't want to be looking at lagging things if we can look at leading things, okay? And so anyway, they're reactive, right? The other thing is that they measure failure. Oh, how was our failure last year? Oh, here's our failure. Oh, that's nice, you know. As we're trying to do good in our safety program, it's like, all right, so measuring failure. That's really not what we want to do. I mean, do we want to look at, yes, I said these have a place, okay? Please don't take me wrong in that. They have a place. They have their place. But the other thing is they also invoke negative reactions. They tend to invoke a negative reaction. So you think about that. Say that you have a high DART rate, especially a small company. You say, you got a small company. Man, one thing is going to shoot your rates up because this is based on, 100,000. So it's like, wow. So if you have one injury, it's like, wow, this looks really bad. And so anyway, so it tends to invoke a negative reaction. The other thing I want to say is, say that you've had 3 years, you've had no lost time incidents. Who's going to be the first to report that? You got this thing hanging up and you say, wow, 3 years, no lost time incidents. Who volunteers to turn in the paperwork? Oh, I'm incentivized. I'm incentivized. I want to be shunned by everybody. I want to be shunned. Oh, look at so-and-so end up ruining it, for everybody. He ended up doing this. And it's like, no. I actually heard a CEO speaking the other day in Kentucky. He was awesome, and he brought this up. He brought this piece up here. He said, I like to look at injury rates 1 year at a time. And he said, we don't focus on them. We make sure that we don't focus on them. We make sure that we don't put emphasis on them. So it's like, well, what do you do then? So it's like, but I want to ask you this. What do injury rates tell us about a potential serious injury or fatality coming? Okay, think about that. Think about your injury rates. What does it tell you about a potential SIF? And then, what do they tell us about our blind spots? Now, when I got ready this morning at the hotel, I looked at myself and I tried make myself look as good as I could with my hair falling out these days and turning gray and everything. And so anyway, it doesn't look bad until I actually end up, getting a mirror there and see that with a blind spot. I have a blind spot here, okay. There's no fun, okay? It's no fun to look at blind spots, okay? Because I'm bald, okay? I'm balding. What do injury rates injury rates are like looking in the mirror and you say, oh, I look pretty good, man. Yeah, I've lost a few here and everything, but I look pretty good overall. Yeah, you ought to get that second mirror going. That's what a blind spot is, okay? It's like we can choose not to look at those things. And so anyway, injury rates absolutely tell us nothing about those. They really don't. And so in other words, it's kind of like this, okay? You got these guys and you say, wow, look, hey, no injury, no incident. I want you to look at that picture. I just want that to kind of go deep with you just for a second, okay? So just take a couple seconds to look at that picture. Let that soak in. There's nothing on the DART, nothing on the recordable injury that is going to tell you that that guy is really close to the edge of the cliff. There's nothing there. Nothing's going to make it. Because isn't that all our safety programs is? We want to know how far in they are from the edge. When our guys are out there rubber gloving, when our guys are out there hot sticking, whatever they're doing, when out there barehanding, don't we just want to know how close they are to the edge? That's all a safety program is. That's your margin for human error, is how close to the edge are they riding their bikes? That's all this is. So anyway, the only way we're going to find blind spots is two ways. It's going to be active engagement and open relationships. That is it. You got these two people walking side by side, management and workers walking side by side. That is the only way that we're going to find it. That's it. You want a blind spot? You want to find your blind spot? You got to have an open communication. You got to have open communication. You got to have engagement. You got to have someone willing to talk. You have to have a safe space to talk, even if it makes you look bad. So anyway, so is safety more about absence of injury, presence of safety? I think Rod talked about this. And so anyway, well, we know that it's not more about absence of injury. We know that it's more about presence of safety. So how do we gauge that? And so here's what I want to finish up with right here, okay? You talk about key performance indicators, okay? So your KPIs, if you will, okay? You got your KPIs. And so you hear about these things. Like, yeah, you want to look at your KPIs for your safety program? We need to be gauging things like safety communications, okay? It's like, yeah, what does our reporting look like? What does our communication look like to everybody, to all of our employees? Do they know what we're working on in safety? Do they know what is really important to us here in safety? What about the skills and knowledge? When's the last time we were able to gauge our skills and knowledge through one way? Did we assess? Did we decide, hey, you know what? We need to be assessing this. We had this incident happen. We need to figure out where we are in our skills and knowledge. What about your safety improvement planning? How is that going? Where you lay out your initiatives and you say, you know what, yeah, we need to do better. We're actively working at multiple things at this utility, at this contractor that we are trying to improve, and that these are important initiatives. How about employee engagement? How's that going for you? Is the employee engagement, are they engaged? Are they talking? Are they out there in the field speaking up and listening up? What's your risk mitigation look like? What do your crew observations look like? It's like, yeah, I mean, are your crew observations something that, so get this on crew observations. We had a situation this year. We was talking to a group of linemen, and they said, oh, crew observations are just so negative. It's like, you don't need to do them. It's like, I'm going, really? Going, oh yeah, it's so negative. I'm going, well, that's not what we hear. Oh, that's bullcrap. Everybody thinks that they're negative. Everybody thinks that we shouldn't have. I'm going, no, that's not true. That's not true. We have a lot of places that really think that crew observations are good. It's a coaching session, and there's great feedback, and it's just a really important thing. And it's like, what does that look like for you? Is that a negative, or your risk mitigation, where you have things like the crew observations? And then, when's the last time you did an in-depth safety culture assessment to see where you're at, where you can have that openness? So anyway, and this is a whole program itself right here, as you can see. So anyway, I'm going to go into this probably into the in that incident prevention article. So anyway, hey, thank you for watching today. Really appreciate it. Awesome. So anyway, if you stuck around and you're actually seeing this, it means that you made it to the end. Congratulations. Okay, maybe one or two of you, right? So anyway, shoot me an email. Let me know that you enjoyed it. Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it. And be careful out there. Please be careful out there. And God bless you all. Thanks.